Good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock. Welcome to the first session of Sustainable Places. You are in the right place. Also, welcome to everyone who is with us online. We will be talking about user engagement in local, energy-driven, smart energy solutions. And we'll be doing that through a couple of different angles. We have 3 projects here, as you will know, with 3 different speakers. Aggeli will be talking about the experience of user engagement and lessons learned in HESTIA project. Tamara will be talking about the Accept project. And then Aniol will be talking about Sender's experience with this. And let me just very briefly give you a bit of a setting for the type of questions that we'll be covering here, and then I'll give the word to Aggeli. My name is Martin Boekelo. I was also part of the HESTIA project. I'm part of DoenWorks. We are a research and consultancy organization that help out on the social side of sustainable energy transitions. And so basically, we have this new context where there is the idea within Europe that the energy transition is going to be citizen-centric. And so that brings us to a slightly different frame than the old one, which was, okay, we have smart technologies, we need solutions for the grid, and we need people to accept these solutions. But that is a different frame, having people accept the solutions and the technologies than having a citizen-centric energy system where citizens are the driver of this transition. So what does that mean? And then that immediately brings you to a question, the next one, which is, who are these citizens? Are they end users? Are these people prosumers? Are they members of a collective or members of a community? We'll be talking about that. And then what is it that you actually offer up? Because if you are thinking of engaging them to sort of help design and develop the technology of tomorrow, then what do you offer up for co-creation? Is it that you want a piece of technology to be co-created, like an interface or a device? Or are you co-creating a whole business model? Are you co-creating governance of local smart energy? And so the 3 projects today have kind of tackled these questions in their own ways. And in so doing, there's a couple of challenges that have come up and that we will review with them. One is how do you institutionalize engagement? Because it's one thing to do this within the project, within the context of a project at the European Union, but then you also want to make this engagement market ready in a certain sense that this can continue to happen. So how do you go from the project to making it part of digital energy solutions in the future? What happens when these technologies that we are now still kind of piloting become more mature, and it's no longer necessarily about co-designing them, but it's about offering a certain kind of meaningful choice about how to tailor these solutions to specific collectives, communities. And then finally, one of the key challenges is also like you get feedback from the end users, from the citizens, and then you want to incorporate that into a new design scope that is difficult within the context of a project, but it's also challenging if you see this as kind of a long term. So how do you do that? How do you create this iteration? Okay, so I mentioned we have HESTIA, Accept and Sender. HESTIA is the holistic demand response services for European residential communities. Accept is about active communities and energy prosumers for the energy transition. And Sender is keeping its acronym secret. I couldn't find it, so I don't know if anybody wants to. No, nobody knows. Good. So these are projects that kind of went at these types of questions in a different way. HESTIA was more about developing solutions for, although this is like a sliding scale, but more for technology developers, market players. Accept was more about empowering communities and Sender are more about prosumers and maybe also working more closely with grid operators. But they all try to do this in kind of a holistic or integral way. Once you start thinking about end users, it's no longer just about, okay, we need a solution for, let's say, intermittency of energy, sustainable energy, but then it becomes a cluster of things that people care about. So it's how do you incorporate things that are not just about energy into this proposition for local smart energy solutions. So this is the setting. High time that we get to our first speaker. It's yeah, which is sorry, this is yeah. So this is what we will be doing in a very short version, and now Aggeliki. So Aggeliki is from Aalborg University, and she is trained as an architect, but has been working on all sorts of types of participatory design and co-creation activities within academia and applied research for some time now. She led the user engagement package in HESTIA, and she will now talk about our experiences there. Welcome to the floor.
Not just to engage users, but to actually get them in the heart of the platform and how they can actually contribute actively to its design and running. So if I get you to kind of start at the top, where we kind of had some initial aims for engagement, just at the ribbon at the top, and that was, as I said, to engage with the residents in the communities. And then at the same time have a cooperative demand response strategy at the community level, and at the same time involve them in co-creation processes. So our core, let's say, theoretical and methodological approach was to use a practice-based and participatory approach. And what that means is that not only we wanted citizens and the other actors in the community to help us understand and design the platform together, but also we wanted to use the idea of the practice-based is that we wanted to understand their everyday lives, what they do, so how they perform their practices, and how can that assist into us giving them a service that can go along that. So not an extra thing that will go on top of things that might be difficult to sustain, but how can we design something that I guess goes along their existing routines and practices in their everyday life. So that was the kind of approach in the beginning. At the same time, and that we had an inclusivity approach and tried to understand how we can reach different types of citizens in the communities. We already understood there was a diversity in our 3 pilots, and I'll go there in a minute. We had 3 pilots across Europe. But as we went along, actually, we discovered that gender was another issue, and I will explain a little bit more afterwards in this, not only gender in the representational way, so, women, men, or this binary, but actually how things are performed in everyday life, and at the same time, the gendering of technology itself, how technology is designed with some gendered profiles. So we tried to take this approach to understand it, and at the same time, another kind of theoretical, I guess, starting point was that we wanted to blend the expertise of the technical partners and the professionals with the lived experience and what we call the kind of amateur, let's say, expertise, which is like how you perform this in everyday life, because people have better knowledge of their own lives than any kind of expert. So designing a platform, and designing a service needs to actually consider all this together. And then some practical activities we try to do in order to incorporate this so more theoretical and methodological things is to start with doing a lot of participatory or co-creation workshops, initially as the first round to understand the community and to map what is there, to see what the issues are, whether these are good or not. We also faced the pandemic. We actually had our first round of workshops just at the edge of the lockdowns, and that was quite challenging. But at the same time, I think it was quite good for the communities because it actually brought them together initially just after the lockdowns, and a lot of them were new residents, especially in one of our pilots, the people had moved there very recently, so they actually had the chance to meet their neighbors a bit more. Then we also did a lot of home tours, and that was, some of them were virtual, because we couldn't actually visit initially all the homes. Some of them were in real life, and the home tours was really something like an interview but walk along, so people could show us some of the routines or some of the processes they use, how they engage with technology, where they are placed in the home, so a more sensory understanding as well of what is happening. And then at the same time, try to focus on the characteristics, the needs, and the kind of practices of the different pilot communities. And if you look on the left, which are the three pilot communities, so we had one in the Netherlands, it's called the Voorhout community, or de Waals, as it's called. Then we had a pilot in Sardinia, in Bergida, which is quite a mountainous kind of location. And then we had Camille-Claudel, which is an area in the, it's just like a suburban development in Paris, which was also relatively new. And what is interesting and why I've put it here is that each community started with different expectations, but by the end of the project we noticed that there were a lot of things that changed. So as an example, because I can't go all through of them, is that for example, in Bergida, in Sardinia, a lot of people started with the idea that they can perhaps make some financial savings, as you would expect. They wanted to learn more because it was a new energy community, so they wanted to increase their learning, or they wanted to do good for the community. And what we saw is that they had quite low, what we call energy literacy, or how they understood and lived with the technology. And by the end of the project, we saw that actually this had improved. So they had an improved energy literacy, they had more awareness of their the consumption, but also of the technologies and how they can intersect with their everyday lives, but also that they had a stronger sense of the energy community. To the right, I have put some of the insights and findings that were actually important for us to understand how demand response is shaped and co-shaped, actually. So we saw, for example, that the life stage and age of people was really important in the way they undertake, you know, the tasks that have been asked, or how they embed this kind of flexibility in their lives, along with, of course, the existing everyday routines. Then housing typology was really important, and how their home was adapted or not, or if it was already a smart home or it was being converted during the project. That actually, it was a really big impact into how they adopted the demand response. And at the same time, we observed that this idea of shared and informal learning was really important, both at household and at community level, in fact, even more at community level, because it helped people contextualize and understand how they can use not just the services, but just the whole concept of flexibility, energy flexibility in their lives, and why, because it's also important. And at the same time, we saw that the gendering of energy technologies, especially how technologies are presented to people, how they profile, we tried hard to generate something a bit more collective as a profile rather than the individual user, because that represents a whole household. That was quite hard to achieve. Yeah, and it has been a very long learning process. Yeah, we haven't quite reached exactly the goals that we had set in the beginning, I guess, in terms of satisfying absolutely everything. But on the social and kind of community level, I think we had a lot of really, really useful insights, which we will discuss in the next part, I think. Thank you very much.
No, thanks. Thank you, Aggeliki. We will have space for questions. We actually have quite a bit of space dedicated for some interaction with you guys. So if you have questions, please note them down. We'll go directly on to the next presentation for now. that is for the Accept pilot. Breffni, Lennon, and Tamara Haidu will be talking about it. And actually, I think Breffni is not here, so we'll just be... oh, you are there. Okay, great. So please come to the stage. Breffni is from University College Cork. He is a human geographer and mostly experienced in interested in the experience of people with energy technologies or energy in general, and especially how that relates to energy citizenship. And Tamara Haidu is from Finland, is doing a postdoc there, but is also part of the Smart Innovation Norway non-profit company that develops all kinds of solutions for sustainable energy transitions. Please, the floor is yours. You can either sit and talk to that or stand and use this one. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Martin. Okay. So good morning, everyone. I hope you've enjoying the good weather. So I'll just explain a little bit about Accept. Oh, we need to be here. Sorry. Just to say that very much like the previous speaker, we had similar issues in terms of the community engagement. It was an interesting project. It's hard to believe actually that it's, we've had 4 years with COVID and everything else kind of impacting us as well. But there was 4 key pilot sites that we had that we had responsibility for in Spain, in the Netherlands, and Switzerland, and in Greece. And there was, again, much like the other projects we had, we were trying to battle with the idea of what is a community, and it's a very kind of a nebulous concept. And particularly when you're trying to translate that into an online or a digital platform, it's very, it raises a lot of issues. So we were looking at a number of ways of, the idea of a community, and we kind of explored that a lot in Work Package 3 as well. You can see from the QR code, there's a number of, that kind of links back to the publications, and there's some nice publications there that are generating interest on that as well. So there are many key barriers and drivers to energy, citizen energy community formation, and you can explore them there as well. So I'll drop you over to Tamara, and if you want to say a little bit more.
Thank you. So I would like to talk a little bit about our users. After all, they are the heart of the project. And in order to meaningfully engage with them, we need to know who they are, what are their motivations, their frustrations, their needs, not only when it comes to the project, but also when it comes to energy communities and energy use in general. So we chose the methodology of creating user personas. So this method was originally created for software development when it was realized that software developers often just assume who are their users, but they don't necessarily have a relatable persona to design their software for. So basically a user persona is a fictional character or an archetype, but it's based on real data. So what we did, we designed a questionnaire based on existing literature on the topic of energy use, energy communities, and personas. We cascaded that survey among our Accept prosumers, and based on the data, we ran through the statistical analysis, and we received these 4 main archetypes or user personas, basically. So as you can see them presented, it's a descending order based on prevalence. So that means that the biggest percentage of our users belong to the first persona, the smart technology one, and the little flags that you see above, it indicates which country are they most prevalent in, but it's very important to mention that all user persona types are present somewhat in all countries, and one user can also be a little bit of all personas or 2 different personas, but this is just an indication of what we're looking at. So the very first and biggest persona we have is the smart technology one. So this persona is most motivated by innovation and then smart gadgets and creating a smart home and optimization. And they're also very motivated by knowledge. So this is the kind of person who wants to know everything about their appliances, their consumption, the project, and all. The second persona is financial concerns. It's a more financially motivated persona, so they are most concerned by the energy crisis that was happening, and they want to, like, first and foremost, they are in the project to save money and save energy consumption, and they are both concerned by their own economy, but both also by the global economy. Then our persona number 3, we call geopolitical vary. It is also somewhat connected to the energy crisis, but more from a political standpoint. So their more bigger motivation is to become independent for big energy providers. They want to be autonomous. They want to produce energy locally, considering the situation that was going on, or is going on, the war in Ukraine and the limits in energy supply. And last but certainly not least, we have the common good persona. We chose this name because it's not only motivated by environmental protection itself, but also it has a very strong community-related motivation. They want to take responsibility for the well-being of not current generations, but also future generations. And since we have a very limited time, I just want to emphasize 2 major lessons learned here. The first one is that contrary to popular belief, not everybody is in it for the finances. So for example, in our accept communities, the biggest persona was motivated by technological innovations, which is very nice to know. And then the second big lessons learned for us was that we need to pay a much better attention to gender balance. As you can see, all personas turned out to be male, but it does not represent correctly our users in accept. It represents the people who we managed to access with our questionnaires. So we need to be very mindful about this in the future, because there are plenty of research on the fact that there are big gender differences when it comes to preferences regarding energy use, like automation or just simply temperature in the house and so on. So this is what I wanted to say for now. Breffni, anything to add?
And just to sum up, I think just to say that around the idea of finances, very much it was about access to resources, not so much about making a profit. So it was access to resources to actually get the work done. You can like, you know, engaging with the people on the different communities. We wear multiple hats at all times. So even say, for example, in Switzerland, where it was very much like, you know, we were engaging with business users and you know, industry types. Again, they are people. They wear multiple hats. Okay, they engage in industry, but they also want to live a good life, and it was engaging in those concepts as well. So, as I say, if you go to the follow the QR code to the Accept website, you can find all the deliverables and research articles there as well. So,
and the whole user persona profiles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, flying through our presentations. Up comes the next one. It will be Aniol Esquerra. He is a true multidisciplinary designer, I guess, in a certain sense. He comes from a technical background in industrial engineering, but he's also done quite a bit on this user engagement front, so he really combines these type of experiences. He works for Ecoserveis, which is in Catalunya, I suppose. Yes, and they a little bit like a Smart Innovation Norway. They kind of develop research concepts and technologies across the board, helping sustainable energy transitions. And he's here to talk about Sender. There is the poster, and Aniol, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Well, actually, thank you very much for coming, because if we were in Spain, this room will be totally empty, you know. When it rains, people think, oh, I'm gonna get wet, and if it's an hybrid event, nobody will be here. So again, thank you for coming. I will talk about Sender project. Sender project, it's the objective mainly just to have a concept. It's about developing energy service for demand response and flexibility. User-centered, and this is the key. We are not talking about energy communities here, but we are going to see how we involved, recruit, and engage the 400 households for the pilot, which was a huge challenge. We didn't get all the households, I already tell you. So the key concept is we co-design it, okay? We need to do this explicit demand response and flexibility for the project, and how, basically, we need to act from the legal framework, if you want to know about it in another session, but we act on technology that is inside these houses. We were talking taking control, and mark this word, take control, about their boilers, HVACs, electrical vehicle chargers, and so on. And this was an issue because we are getting inside our home and saying, knock, knock, hey, can you let me control your stuff? We need to be careful on this message already. As I said, the objective was to achieve 400 households. That was really ambitious. We were 15 partners, 6.6 millions. Actually, it's 50. We are in month 48, and it will end until month 54. We need an extension. But let's cut to the chase. We have 3 pilots, okay, to do that, in Finland, Spain, in Austria. Different kind of people, different cultures. Then we are act on this technology. And to do that, to do this user-centered design, we went through co-creation events, co-creation sessions with different kind of people, DSOs, aggregators, and users. And of course, the needs were totally different. It's one of the lessons learned there. Why? Because we needed to know how we can go inside in this house and take control of these appliances. And from this from these co-creation events, we achieved 2 defined use cases. The use cases, the needs of these people, which was really important, and that's one of the main outputs of this. It's to know that we want to have demand response and flexibility to collect that from the houses, to be more efficient on the tariff and the use of renewable energy on those houses as well, and try to make a peer-to-peer trading between the households that they are inside this pilot. But there were data protection issues, that were also communication issues, and for that we needed an engagement strategy. And we did it in 3 phases: recruitment, engagement, and then persistence. Because those 3, they were like a circle. If we want to maintain the community after the end of the project, we needed also the persistence. And for the recruitment, engagement, and persistence, there were different communication channels, different strategies as well. We can talk it later if you want in the roundtable. And one thing we also detect is that we needed like a phase 0, a readiness, to prepare those people to talk about demand response, because we detected that people knew already energy efficiency. But if you talk about demand response, people, they don't know what is it. So we prepare a specific communication campaign in newsletters and also in social media, hashtagging the demand response, or to relate the 2 words. Because then afterwards, in the recruitment stage, we could talk about this without being something totally uninformed for them. Then regarding the implementation, actually, there was quite complex. We needed to go there, call them, have a first visit, let us know which kind of appliances, and take pictures and send us through WhatsApp or email and so on. Then we want there a commissioner to install a Raspberry Pi and plenty of stuff, and ask for the Wi-Fi password. Well, I think that maybe you know already how does it work, but it was quite complicated. And we prepare what is the user journey, which was actually really useful, not for the users, but also for own partners, because sometimes, you know, it's difficult to know what you have to do, so it was really, really good. Just as lessons learned, in the proposal, you know that you put some numbers and you are super happy and you want to impress, I guess, the European Commission. You say, yeah, we're going to reach 400 households with just 1 visit. Actually, we are going to spend 500 euros. Well, we achieved 250 households. We expend almost twice of what we expected in the budget. And if we expected 1 visit, it goes up to 4 maybe in some times. Why? Because this is not working, then we have to reprogram the Wi-Fi and so on. But well, actually we have also the COVID, the Ukrainian war, the chip crisis. A Raspberry Pi in the beginning, it was 50 euros, then it went to 150, and we went to, we were waiting like 1 year to have them. The point is, regarding engagement and recruitment, we have a problem to face that we recruited early, and then we should maintain these people a lot of time until the pilot starts. And this was a huge challenge. And we went to the with a lot of communication, and then on. And another challenge was the expectations. We provided also high expectations to the users, and then we actually, let's say, implemented half of it. And this is something also the pilots, and here how we organized it, that there were 3 pilots, and there was a coordinator for 3 pilots, considering the user engagement, okay, together with the 3 pilots, and always having someone to support the pilots to do this work. Yeah, and that's it. I think that the most important things that we can talk about, they can be talked about during the roundtable, but I hope that was interesting for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aniol. All right, so then we come to the interactive part. We will have a discussion, or what is called a roundtable, and we will actually get the discussion going with a couple of questions that we want to make sure that we dive into, but hopefully you will get inspired and you will want to follow up with your own questions. So I want to invite all the speakers to the stage, because that will basically is the easiest way for us to have this discussion, and also for people to follow it back home. So. And surprise guest for our roundtable is Arjan Schamhart. I'm Dutch also. Schamhart. And he is part of the Accept project, and he is a member of one of the cooperatives that was part of one of the communities in the Netherlands. And he'll be sharing his experience as well. So then maybe without further ado, start off maybe with a basic question. Let's say that there is someone who is not convinced that user engagement is valuable to bother with at all. How would you respond to that? Like, what is the value of engaging users?
No, yes. Yeah, actually in our project in Center, without the co-creation events and engagement of the users, no pilots at all. I mean, for us it was really important, and this is words from the pilots themselves. I asked them, of course. With the co-creation, we have a holistic vision of the user needs, and also in demand response, the needs of the DSOs, the aggregators, and so on, and we need to put those in balance. Also the commitment. All the pilots say that the users that they were in the co-creation events, they were committed to the pilot afterwards, and they still there for a long time. And they also gave us confidence, because as we say, we're in our words, we say that we are going to take control of your appliance or HVAC and so on, and we fear that people say, I don't want that. And actually, during the co-creations, they say, it's okay. I mean, if it's for as they say, there are different profiles. There is the energy aware. They say if it's for help the environment, that's okay. If it's for finance, it's okay. So that helped us a lot. And of course, the definition of the needs from the users, that was really important.
Can you give maybe one example of that, the definition of the needs?
Yeah, actually, as in other projects, there were these 2 kinds of profiles. One is the financial one. They say, okay, I want to save money, and we specifically ask how much, and they say if it's already 10 euros per month or 5, it's okay. And that was quite shocking, because we thought that we were going to ask more in exchange of taking control of their appliances. And the other one is the environment. I say, okay, I want to decarbonize my electricity, and this is one of the use cases as well, to use the maximum energy, renewable energy from my PV, for example, and that's, for me, it's enough.
Yeah. Cool. Arjan, you are kind of on the border between someone who is to be engaged and who is engaging. Maybe you want to share your perspective as well?
Well, yeah. For us, it's a very, very important thing to have this engagement going, and for us, it was key. We are in the community in Holland, which is already formed for a long time. So people came together with this purpose of more eco-friendly solutions. So this worked quite well in our area, but it was very, very important to have this transparency going. And this was a difficult thing because we were not in the tech partners part, but we had to implement this part in the community. So this was a thing, and also lesson learned that every part of the project should be transparent. So also the algorithms which decide which demand response scheme is actual should be checked in a way by the community or at a certain level in the community.
Why was this transparency so important? It was important from the get-go?
It was important to let the people feel that it's okay what we are doing, because otherwise they kind of feel hacked in their system.
Aggeliki, if you want to add anything to that, then I'll have a question for you in a bit. Just a reminder, we have the Slido there. It's especially useful, I guess, for the people at home, but you can also use it here if you're in the crowd. But otherwise, I will pass a mic on to you in a bit. Okay, so for a second question, this is more about practicality. So, okay, you decide, it's important. It's important for commitment. It's important for transparency and trust. It's important for actually what you're doing that responds to a need. What happens when you start doing it? Because then it gets messy. What has worked best for each step of user engagement in your experiences, and how did this differ from actually what you designed, what you thought you were going to do in the beginning? Maybe Aggeliki, this is one for you to kick off.
Yeah, sure. So I think starting off with what both of you said actually about, first of all, asking people rather than demanding or telling them what to do is the starting point. But I guess we needed to have flexibility to design flexibility. And we were hit by COVID, and we learned that really early on. Starting off, we couldn't even access people. We were all in lockdown. So we had to, from our initial plan, we sort of had to adjust how we could also do similar activities online. So virtualize some of the interactions. And initially, we were really nervous about it, how it would be. But actually, people were quite generous. They opened their homes even virtually, and we could have a glimpse of their lives even, in lockdown. So that was the first kind of window. And I guess what we learned through time is some of the things that we did that was good was within the whole umbrella of participatory engagement. We started doing small group. We did the big community groups, which was nice to get a better understanding of the edges of things. But at the same time, then in different pilots, so for example, in the Netherlands, we had a women-only kind of focus group, which was a small group discussion, which when we started understanding, for example, that demand response relates very heavily to the way that household labor is performed. And a lot of it is gendered. And still a high proportion is performed by women. In some communities, even by older women, like the grandmothers of the home that live, close or above the homes of their kids. So we started to understand how we can then not isolate perspectives, but actually understand it in a different context and then get back to the big community. So I think that worked well because we got really useful insights and learnings from doing that. And at the same time, it was the general attempt for us to understand how technology is embedded in people's life. Not talk about the technical aspect only, but what do you do with it, and why is it important, and how, and then realizing the interconnections. You can ask someone to not wash, at peak hours if that's the only window they might have to load a load or to coordinate things in the home. So it's like a domino. Once you start doing one thing, the other things fall over. So we needed to make these connections, and when we started doing that, it helped us understand. And at the same time, it's also see how we can make it specific for each pilot. So I think it's just our pilot leaders were good at knowing how the community would respond to things. We were unfortunate to miss and lose some people on the way as well, which I think affected a little bit the dynamics. But generally, I think this customized idea of understanding its context and the very localized sociocultural issues, because it is a sociocultural issue, it's not just a technical issue, it's a complex thing, so I think worked well. So.
Aniol, you already mentioned that things didn't quite pan out the way that you had imagined. What did you learn along the way?
Yeah, that is the paper, no, and then the reality. We defined very nice profiles and communication channels and a lot of stuff for the pilots. And then, of course, there was COVID. There was readjustment of the budget as well. So we didn't have in the end incentives, economic incentives for the pilots. I asked the pilots, and what it really worked during the engagement depends on the country. I mean, for example, for Austria, during the recruitment, they were surprised on what was the effect of publishing a press release in a local newspaper for recruitment that worked really well, and it has the same effect that all the posts in social media, and we were not expecting that. And they were really happy. And instead, in Spain, they were like the multiple channels. They said that they were flanking and trying to go to the user from different angles. That was very good. And they actually organized workshops. And it's a small town, 10,000 people, and they have paellas, you know. And if you have food, normally, that normally works in South European countries. That helps a lot. WhatsApp groups. I mean, something so simple than that, and connect and try to be a peer-to-peer with them. That worked really well in Spain. And in Finland was different. People, they don't want to go to a meeting room. They prefer online. That's what she said to me. So I don't know if there is anyone from Finland that they told me that, and LinkedIn as well. It worked a lot. The problem is that we fell in something. We reach, let's say, pioneers and early adopters. It was really difficult to go through to later or skeptics on the technology. But well, that's.
If anybody has experience with this particular issue in the public, that would be nice to hear your experience there. Let me move on to the last question before we open up to the public. And that's this question about end users or citizens being users of technology, being consumers, versus them being members of a community. So actually all these three projects targeted energy collectives or energy communities. And we wanted to dig in a little bit about what that means. Like, what does that mean that these are collectives in some sense, or they could be collectives? Like, what does that mean if you could leverage that communal dimension for these kinds of projects? And Arjen, of course, is the expert on this, so I'm going to start with him.
Not being totally an expert on this, but the thing is that I'm the pilot leader from the Netherlands project in Accept. So I live in this area. And people who live in this area are really they decided to live there because of this subject where we are now talking about. So it was we had contact with all the people in the area very easily. So there was no issue of how to reach them and which mean to use. You know, we've got this newsletter which is there every 4 times a year. We've got the WhatsApp groups already available. So it's a matter of everybody knows me and Alexandra who's helping me. So we didn't need to make such an effort. Even in the COVID time, it was really easy to reach them. And we had these meetings outside when there was some sun nowadays. So it was very easy going to reach them. We didn't have problems. The problem for engagement was the long term of the project, which is really, there needs to be some work to be done. When we reach these people, and there's nothing happening for over a year, and then there's something happening, and then over a half a year, nothing happens again. Well, this is nagging. You know, this is not the way you can engage people and keep them engaged.
Okay, important challenge. So the two, again, we'll pose them to the public. One is the question of diversity and being sure that you can reach diversity people. And then the second one is these projects that tend to have these starts and stops. How do you manage that time-wise? Did you feel like the fact that you had already established this community, in a sense, the infrastructure of it, people knew each other, that helped with that first problem of making sure that it's not just like sort of the first persona in the Accept project, the techies, the enthusiasts, but also people that may not be like the usual suspect, let's say?
Yeah, sure. It was far easier to connect to these people. We did the persona research, which was very helpful. But for us in our daily life in the project, it was not needed because we knew the people how to reach, which ones to address when we wanted them to do a test, you know. Because from the tech partners, we heard that it's very important to inform them ahead because otherwise they refuse to cooperate. Well, this doesn't appear with us. I mean, I just phone them and I tell them tomorrow we'll be testing and it's fine.
Okay, so yeah, the community is clearly also a factor in trust.
Sure.
Yeah. Aggeliki.
I think what you said, Aggeli, is really important in terms of what kind of community you're tapping in, because it's not just us getting accepted by the community, it's just a two-way relationship. So some communities, in our case, were already good, very close-knit communities that we didn't need to tell people to come together. They would anyway go out and talk to people every day and they would share everything. In other cases, it wasn't the case. You know, we had, for example, in Bergida, where it's a mountainous village, people were really a close-knit community already. People were very engaged. And we had a really good municipality. The mayor was like the hero of, you know, many Horizon projects, apparently. It was not just ours, and they were encouraged from all sides. So there was a bottom-up, if you think, from the people, kind of willingness to do this, and also a kind of top-down support. So it was well integrated. But in other cases, for example, in our French pilot, it was a suburban community, people working, you know, they had busy lives, young children, some students, you know, people living on their own. So there wasn't this sense of community in the same way, and it wasn't that people didn't want to be part of it, it's just they practically couldn't necessarily engage. And so I think another thing, before we get on to the positive things, is that actually we saw a disconnection between this idea of the material infrastructure that a community holds and also let's say the cultural side of community. So a community, to work for that purpose, we need to have this alignment of the materiality, the technology, the infrastructure that supports this community. Otherwise, there's a bigger jump and it might be more difficult to align it within the time of the project, because what we're asking people is essentially to get to a point where they sustain this. It's not just an experiment for a month. The other thing we noticed, we learned very quickly from it, I hope, is that we tried to introduce this kind of idea of gamification through the platform, and it didn't work because people do not like to, and they explicitly told us that they want to work with their neighbors. They want to know what they're doing, of course, there's always that, but they don't want to compete against them. They don't want to be champions. They don't want to be, you know, the people that are kind of doing it because they're better than. They want to work together in that sense. And although, you know, not everyone has this big egalitarian purpose of, you know, saving the environment and everything, but at least within a community, we saw that even in the very localized level, it was important to get people on board together and to also develop this collective vision, because it wasn't just up to us to create this, but it was us to facilitate it and let them develop their own understanding and to create this, like, exploit that peer networking that developed in order to build the project. We did actually do some recommendations as part of our project about halfway through, and we related that back to recommendations about community building regarding the technologies, and I think it was kind of nice to see some of the even small learnings we had, like this idea of competition, that perhaps is better to tap into collective vision rather than competition, and how to kind of, understand how we can offer collective incentives rather than just individual. So not just focus on people individually. Yeah. I think we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. I'll actually pass you the mic. If there are other people who also have a question, two. I'll take 3 questions at a time, and then maybe it's also from. Yeah, we have a few from the side. All right, great. We'll alternate. So I'll give you the mic, pass it around, and then we'll head back to.
Sorry, actually, I had a comment to the last thing that about the competition. We had a project like 10 years ago where it was about energy positive neighborhoods. And we got the neighborhoods competing with each other. And that created some community feeling within the neighborhood. And that's, but actually one of the questions was mine also in there. That how did you ensure that you get the most effective results from this consumer engagement regarding the energy consumption or demand response? Because it might be that some people who are not participating in the engagement, they would be more effective in their actions, I mean in case of energy consumption or demand response.
Hi, good morning. I'm Håkan Perslow from RISE, the Research Institute in Sweden. Thank you for the presentations. I have some experience myself from similar actions, and I heard similar stories from other projects throughout the years. More or less always with a bit of, and I'm not trying to be criticizing here, but that's you enter into trying to implement a technology and finding out the reality and the tenant stakeholders and this sort of environment is much more complex than expected. So my question is, if you would have been able to do this all over again, what would you have done differently?
Hello, I'm Antonio Soler from Spain. I'm the responsible of the Spanish pilot site in Accept. Two direct questions to Aniol. First of all, how did it work, the SEAP? How long did you take to prepare it? And how did you get a good relation with the users, especially in demand response, the SEAP? And the other one, you have said something about...
Thanks. I was afraid to ask.
Well, the SEAP is the application developed by your project and also our project, and it's the interface to exchange information with the user. The user can switch on and off the devices, can receive signals for demand response. It's the link between the energy community manager and the users who are participating in that project. No? We had some kind of delays in the SEAP, and for us, we feel that it was an important problem to get a good engagement because of what Arian said. It was too long time between the start of the project, the first version of the SEAP, the SEAP was with some kind of problems, and we had to work a lot to improve it. So that for us is, I mean, there was a principal issue in our project. And the second one is about the economical incentives that you have said. I understand that you provided you gave some money to the users to participate. How was it? I mean, what amount are we talking about? And did you get to introduce that economical amount in the budget? Was something that the budget considered to pay the users for participating in the project?
Alrighty, thank you. So a question about the difference between those who engage in the user engagement strategies and those who actually will respond to the technology as you implement it. A question about what have you learned and what will you do differently, and does that mean that next time it will go smoother? And two questions about planning and paying for user engagement. Take it as you want.
Well, for us, one of the main lessons learned is that in our project, it was the tech partners who decided what we will offer to the users. And this is what the Mr. in the end mentions, and this was, as far as I'm concerned, for the pilot in Holland, it was a big problem. Because there was this screens full of details, and the users didn't know why they were there, what they should do with it, and what they could learn from it. So for me, as a pilot leader in Holland, I would propose to start with the user. You know, you decide the goal of the project, of course, when you write the proposal, then you decide what is the proposal, what is the goal of the project, and then you go to the user, and then you ask the user, what do you need to fulfill my goal in the project? And then you ask the tech partners to develop something, which is, for us, in the Accept project, it was the other way around. And this is not the way it works, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, briefly. Yeah, I think that what we will have done differently, it's in the proposal stage already. I mean, to define much better the target and the scope, because it was too ambitious. And then that if you spread your effort, then it's really difficult to focus, and maybe that was it. I think that during the gap, it's very important to communicate very well to the pilots what they will need to deploy, because we know how sometimes the proposals are composed, and the communication during the gap saying, okay, look, you need to deploy this. Don't have a misunderstanding on that. It's really important. And regarding how targeting the residential sector, it worked very well in another project. Is targeting buildings too, not going to just people, but you can go through, for example, association of municipalities, of the municipality itself. You can say, hey, do you have any building that it's going to be renovated? You see that there are people already engaged on that, and target the building. And then you will have 20 households maybe, or 30. With a single visit, you can already have 10 installations. It's much, much easier to do.
Yeah, I can use this. So we're answering what you would have done. That's like, okay, are we talking of the ideal project? Because that's a really big answer. But I guess within the range of what we had, some of the things that could have maybe become better is that, yeah, I think the issue of technology comes in a lot. I think better coordination or better blending of what we wanted to offer as a service and as how many different technologies we had in the project, with actually the realistic view of what it means to people in practice, and also how to make it relevant. So I think we didn't need so much in the sense, because, yeah, we didn't. And but I think also in terms of process, so I think the co-creation process, we tried a little bit to introduce co-creation within our consortium before we go out also to the participants, and that was an important thing. It was hard, very hard. I think we got through a lot of things, and the final interviews, I think, showed that actually a lot of people did get something from the process, even though it was small. So better co-creation first within ourselves as partners before we move out to the community, and then at the same time in terms of the practical things in the community. Something I think a lot of us were trying to support is this idea of the collective profiling rather than individual user profile. The user is not always one, and usually, it's not the loudest, most educated, usually male person. There's a lot of different diversity in the profiling, and we need to understand this and put it in practice, and also maybe perhaps understand how we can profile the household as a unit rather than as individual user. That would be one that would be nice to do. And at the same time, I think on a personal level that I would have liked to connect the communities between them, like the actual pilots, so that they can see that what they're doing, even within the small thing, is something that connects with other people around, and that they might have similarities, they might have differences, but they can feel it's the emotional, the kind of solidarity that, even small things matter, because there's a lot of those small things around. So I guess that's another.
Thanks. Yeah, I see a question here. I want to take two questions. Okay, please add.
Actually, what I believe also, I'm from the Netherlands, Alexandra, from the orange guy. Actually, what I also think was very helpful in continuing the commitment was stressing that it was a pilot, that we are not bringing people the things we are developing. We are developing the things, and we use the pilot side to test them. So everything that didn't work and was frustrating, we could say, "Oh, thank you." We bring it back to the pilot leader, because that's something we can learn from, and that's because that's actually what the project is about: to develop it and not to act as if it's already there. And I believe that was very helpful. At least we had to resort to that quite often.
Thanks for that addition. I'd like to take 2 questions from the people back home. If there's any other questions here from the public, I see no more hands for the moment. Then maybe just 3. And
yeah, this one.
This is Yeimy. She's part of HESTIA. Classe Digitaal Catalunya.
Thank you, Martin. So many questions have been answered already, so I'm just focusing on the ones that you have not answered yet. Maybe Susan here? No, because I'm not sure if this question is from the from people from here. Yeah, yes. You want me to ask your question, or you want to ask? Okay, perfect. Okay, so outside of gender, were marginalized communities considered? Those are risk of exclusion, for example, or what other factors under intersectionality were considered? This is one question, and then the second one is anonymous, so I'm not going to ask for the for the one who asked. How do you manage the cultural differences, even with between the same country there are differences? That must have been a challenge to adapt these methodologies.
Okay, thanks for this question. It's really important, and it was something that came to us very early on in terms of reaching out different types of citizen groups. There were 2 issues. First is we didn't have a very great variety of I think, okay, take for example Berhida. We had a village that was a community that was, the profiles were kind of similar to what we saw within the village initially, so we didn't have a big range of people sitting, let's say, in very challenged situations, like, for example, energy poverty. Maybe there were some that we couldn't find. So, and in other cases, like in our French pilot, we knew we had some social housing that was in the area, and initially our plan was to involve them, and somehow the municipality was not able to reach them, so the people on the ground. So we never actually had the people that we finally recruited, because there were 2 stages into understanding the community. One was to do a wider exploration to see what exists in the area, and then understand what kind of stakeholders are involved. And then the next stage would be to recruit and sign up these households. And within the process of that, and with COVID and everything else in between, we actually, I think, missed out on a lot of households that could represent the more, underrepresented groups, if you like, or perhaps people in energy poverty. So we didn't actually have a lot of people in our group that belonged to this. However, we did have a big range in terms of understanding how gender intersectional. So, for example, what that means is how age or life stage intersects with gender. We had a lot of really good examples, and this is early on, even during the first few months, we realized how important that is. And especially when we had a big workshop, we asked the people how they perform things, and then we realized that actually the people that, some of them were not in the workshop, like the grandmothers and grandfathers that were living above, they were sharing the energy system because they were all, connected in the same, PVs, for example, and then but it was some of the people staying at home all day performing this. So they were able to be flexible, but they weren't there to tell us. So it would be the son or daughter which will tell us something else. So we started, and this is how we dealt with it. We did specific focus groups to engage people separately or to go and reach out actively. So some of our pilot partners knew who these people were, so they would approach and they would talk to them or do a focus group or an interview. So we tried to integrate a little bit their experience and their perspective, but it was still very hard because another challenge we had was when the notifications were received. We had a big conversation over and over again. Who receives the notifications and who actually performs the practice of that flexibility action? So if a lot of people that would receive it would be people that would be at work and they would say that you need to wash tomorrow between 10 and 11 because it's going to be sunny. But actually, if their mom at home would do it, she would do it anyway, and they wouldn't know how that would happen. So there was a disconnection between the actual technology doing its work, people thinking that, yes, they will action it, but actually it was a miscommunication to the people who perform these practices. So we shouldn't forget, again, it's the purpose of the technology and how eventually it's not about just the system operating, but it's actually how we embed it in people's lives. So, yeah.
Let me follow up a little bit. So this is, I think there are like these two very big overall challenges that also, I think, have become bigger or more prominent as we solve some earlier challenges. One is this diversity of participants and making sure that you go beyond the usual suspects. And the other one is this question of like, okay, what is co-creation about here? Like, are we going to give them a PowerPoint presentation of all the wonderful things that we want to do, and then we ask them, well, we also need input a little bit, or do we start with, okay, what are your needs, what are your values? How can you balance the fact that you're always already part of some trajectory of development, and then you want to involve new people in that process? I would be very interested, because I'm sure that all of you are experts in this as well, in your own projects. How do you balance also the requirements of a EU-funded project where you have to pin everything down from the very start? And then how do you open that up again in the beginning? How did you do co-creation among the pilot partners? And how do you do co-creation among with your end users? Are there any people, you don't necessarily have to have answers to it, but maybe you can share experiences?
I have one more question. Just a general question about how data privacy also relates to the user engagement, because Aniol mentioned that in Sender projects, the initial idea was to use some like peer-to-peer, and then due to data privacy, was it something regulatory or something related to the end user that was not like happy with like their like data being shared, and is it like something that's impacting like in the number of people you can really get like to participate in these projects?
Yeah, actually, the peer-to-peer trading use case was the users were really interested on this use case, and as I said at the beginning, there is a parallel session regulatory. It was because of regulatory. We had a document analyzing what we could implement in each country, and the peer-to-peer trading that it's not possible to do it in Finland, Austria, or in Spain right now. That's unfortunate.
And do you think this is something that the end users would accept it?
Yeah, totally. At least from the responses we had, that was one of the use cases they were really interested. It also depends the intensity. Let's say in Spain, for example, that there is a specific people want to avoid going through the DSO, let's say, no, going to the centralized scheme of electricity, and to share and to have deals between the community. It's something that they are really interested.
Can I just add, it's a thing about privacy, and there's one thing about the data, but it's also another thing we also encountered, and Martin can tell you more because it happened, I think, in the Netherlands as well. So when we were installing our equipment, a lot of people didn't like things in their homes, and that was, I mean, in one of the pilots, in the French pilot, was an issue of aesthetics. I don't want to see any more things around. I don't want wires. I don't want devices. Also, people were really particularly sensitive about things installed in their bedrooms, and then they were sort of thinking, what is this? The sensor going to know who comes in my bed and what time and when I do this? And we were trying, so we had to actually write letters to people to specifically, like I think Martin knows because he did that, and to explain what these technologies would do, how they sense, you know, maybe temperature change or indoor climate, but not necessarily the movement, or they won't know what happened. But it is a really important part of people, like the issue of entering people's homes with things that they might not even understand what it's for or how to use, but also implications about how, you know, continue to be with them, like live with technology.
Actually, in Holland, also the sensors were the most sensible thing. It's the movements, the bedrooms, what's happening there, and also that the guilty guys know when you're there. You know, this kind of things were very sensitive in our pilot as well. But which is important also to add to your first point is that we found that the learning curve of the users is very fast. It's very important that even if you don't apply the technology provided, that the community develops as such in this sense, so that they understand better what is the energy transition, how they can participate in it in the long run. You see, so it's inside the project, but it's also in the bigger picture, which is very important.
Yeah. Please, if you have questions, raise your hand. If not, I'll just ask one follow-up question, which is about the results, I guess, of user engagement. You get all this feedback, but then you have to incorporate that into your proposition, and then there is also the longer-term perspective of like how does this get translated into new projects or into a more market-ready solution? How can you make sure that sort of errors of the past are not repeated, that we learn from each other? So what happens, do you have anything to share in terms of that challenge, making sure that the feedback that you get actually gets picked up by your partners, gets implemented, yeah, do you see any challenges there? And if so, what?
Well, if I understand the question right, it's this work package thing is it's nagging. So you've got this work package of managing the project, which actually is a very little amount of hours because this overhead, and we don't want overhead. So I manage the project not with the work package, which is supposed to fill it in. So that's inside the project. It's a difficult thing. This overhead thing. Is this a part of the answer?
Maybe. What do you mean by overhead here, and how does it relate to making sure that what people are telling you gets translated into the development of the solutions?
Because much of my effort is to get the knowledge from the users to the tech partners. And this is, I call this overhead, because it's not really work. It needs to be done to get this project going, and also to express the feelings which are there and develop in the area.
Yeah, it's own work.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's work, but it's not acknowledged as work in the work package structure.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say something? Yeah, regarding if I understood the question, it's regarding the challenges in the project concerning the user engagement?
Yeah, and especially then getting from feedback to implementation, like what happens with the...
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I think that, as you said, there are two kind of, we have the users, we have technical partners, and I don't know in your projects, but sometimes what it happens is that the technical partners, they already in mind something and try to move this vision. It's tough. I mean, in our project, for example, we got a lot of needs and definitions from the users, but the technological implementation was already like set up a little bit. And this is, yeah, I'm really polite. So it's a challenge, because then you need really to focus on saying, look, but what to ensure the success, you need to fulfill the requirements and the needs of the users, right? And we manage that through a lot of communication, and in our case, we have Ecoserveis had the role of being the bridge between the pilot partners and the technological partners. It's really time-consuming, but it's like we are centralizing these overheads, and we let the pilots do their work and the technological partners they work, and we are doing this for that. So it's exhausting as well. I mean, I'm really tired, but it's worthy. And even though it's as you said, it's quite difficult sometimes.
Aggeliki?
Yeah, it's a small...
Oh, I'm going to be really strong after this session.
A small thing to add. I think it is a design element. If you need that good feedback loop, you have to design it in from the proposal stage. So that's one thing. Another one is to manage the expectations and to align the expectations between both the technology developers, the project partners, and the communities, because sometimes I think the EU projects tend to overpromise a lot of things, especially on the side of technology delivery or innovation. And we always have this. I've seen it so many times that in the end, like, oh yeah, of course, but reality was different and community. And so basically we have to align, and maybe we have to be less ambitious, because it's better to do one step and do it well rather than try and do 5 and fall, because maybe we are asking ourselves for too much. So it is aligning that real expectation and what can happen, what can be digested. Like, yeah.
Thanks. I think those are very, very valuable points. Yeah, we have a couple of additions, I think, to this conversation. One here and one in the back.
Okay, but it's also important to align expectation with the pilot partners, because sometimes we don't know what are we going to, let's say, sell to the users. Yeah. So we are the first one that we have to deal with this development, because at the beginning we are not sure what we're going to offer. We are promising things to the users that maybe they are not feasible, because we expect that it might be there, and sometimes it's a tricky balance, because at the end of the day you have promised something to the Commission, you have to deliver, you have a period of time to do it, so it's hard, to balance all these things. But okay, maybe working on things that we have done before is better. So yeah, my 2 cents.
Thanks. It is hard.
It's hard.
Yeah, following up with a similar question. So I was wondering, you seem to have all done this within Horizon-funded projects. In what way did that format of doing it within a Horizon project, in what way did that help you to deliver, and in what way did it sort of constrain you or hinder you?
Nice, please.
Yeah, maybe I could reply to the first comment. As I said, it's really important, I think, to take into account the own pilot partner into the engagement strategy, because he's the messenger and he will feel comfortable in some actions and not. And also, as I said, during the gap or during the proposal stage, to clarify very well what will be implemented to avoid misunderstandings. That's really important. And if you want to...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking that's a really good question about the Horizon framework. I haven't actually done it outside the Horizon framework, so I can't really necessarily judge that. I guess the Horizon gives you a structure to play on and a timeline which might be good and bad. So at least you know that you have some kind of milestones perhaps in a project that has a beginning and an end, so that gives you an idea of what you can deliver. But I think on the other hand, that is also the challenge, that when we talk about community change and practice change within homes, I don't think the time of 2, 3 or 4 years is enough. We never monitor the impact of the project, which happens sometimes outside the project. So I think that for me it was always, we say we judge, we write about the impacts right now, we write about our project for HESTIA for the impact, the socioeconomic impacts. And I'm thinking, well, it's actually too early almost, like you can't see that because people didn't have the time to practically embed the practice of the platform in their lives. And I think it would be nice to have some learning that comes, I don't know, a year or 2 years later. So something that maybe monitors what happened and if anything happened. Because we also have too many projects doing the same thing and we never know what happened. And then new projects are picking up without necessarily continuing from that leftover impact that the other project had. Some are probably good at that, but I don't know. I don't see the whole picture. But
exercise again.
Okay.
No, if you want to comment first.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I think that in our case, that we also work with a lot of Horizon Europe projects, it gives you planning, funds, and an objective, a scope. And without that, it will be not so much efficient to implement the project. And regarding the cons, I would say maybe the flexibility. It depends on the project advisor. Normally, the project advisors are happy to change or to be flexible on some modifications. The problem is that actually, if you don't want to have any risk, it's reading the financial statement, and you need to go through an amendment and change the grant agreement if you want to do that, and that takes a long time. In our case, for example, in Sender, I think that we went through 3 or 4 amendments. I don't know. So that 2, 3 amendments. you know, and that takes time, and you don't spend money until the amendment is approved, because or you take the risk or not, and we don't want to take the risk. So that's maybe the cons. It's
changing the grant agreement and then also changing the project officer. We had in one amendment we had 4 project officers, which helped to make it a long way. Now I want to add something else. It's about the limitations of the project, because in our case in Holland we kind of learned from the ACCEPT project what we needed to do in the future. So then there's a big project developed in Holland with the communities, how do you say it, the cooperatives which are existing. You know, maybe in Holland we have got over 700 cooperatives in the country, so it's a widespread thing. And with this cooperatives and together with the government, we have got a multi-million project going, actually, to develop the ideas which are already developed in ACCEPT, but then in a feasible way. So you got this is a very important development, that it doesn't end at the end of this year. Local for local.
Thanks. I think we have 2 final questions, one from the audience and one from online. Let me start with the one online, and I'll pass the mic to you. Which is a question about diversity, again, about this in relation to comfort. So comfort is very subjective, or the very least it's diverse. And so, but then through this technology, you have to kind of standardize, somehow implement the comfort settings. And how do you deal with that tension of, on the one hand, standardizing programming for it, but then also still doing justice to these very different experiences or requirements for comfort? And then to you, I think the last question. Oh, you want to add a little as well?
Yes, I'm Mia Alaisula from VTT, Finland. And sorry to be this pragmatic, but coming back to the Aggeliki's comment on that we would need to lower our, or also Aniol's, that we would need to lower our perspectives in the projects. But if we do that, we have to be very bold in our objectives, because if we put them lower, we don't get the funding. So we have to put them up to the level that we think that would be possible to reach. Sorry about this, pragmatic.
Can I answer this now? Yeah, I think you're right. I kind of thought it's not lower, I think it's adjust and align. And I think what I meant is not lower the ambition for becoming more bold in our sustainability. Yes, I agree. I think we are people still tapping us on the back. Yeah, please, if you would like to make a small change, you know, we're never going to get anywhere like that. What I meant is perhaps lower the amount of, adjust our understanding of how change to more sustainable living could happen by understanding that a lot of that happens without necessarily the use of technology. So it's not the technology that will bring the solution to sustainable living and more energy efficient living, but it's actually a lot that we discovered in the process, that a lot can happen through, for example, a lot of it can be removal of things. Like we try to talk to people about flexibility, which is changing their consumption, but what we didn't quite trace so well, and I think it is important, is how much people reduce their consumption, which means that actually I'm not going to wash that much, or I'm not going to use some appliances that much. We don't trace that in the platform. We just trace maybe when it was and how we can we did everything to help the grid rather than necessarily to be more sustainable, yeah? So what I'm saying, I guess maybe I didn't phrase it right, is to not lower our expectations for delivering a more sustainable living and a kind of quicker change, but maybe how we can understand what are the issues that contribute to that and be more bold about how to assist this change, which could be manual, like rather than only technological. I think it's both. It's not just one or the other, but yeah. So that was.
Yeah, and answering the question regarding comfort, in Sender we had boilers, HVAC, and electrical vehicle chargers. And as you can think about it, nobody wants to shower with cold water or find out that your electrical vehicle is without battery and that they are cold at home. What happened in Sender, we were scared and we feared that users could withdraw from the pilot if they found out. So we had a very conservative approach. All the time, we ensure that the boiler has the minimum temperature to have a hot shower, and the electrical vehicle, it's fully charged, right? Strategies, what we think is that we need to give this decision to the user. I mean, as there are different profiles in the HVACs, to have a system say, okay, you want to have eco or comfort, and select, right? If you have eco, you know that you can have sometimes some problems with the temperature at home, or that you can select that your electrical vehicle could be at 60% of the battery. But the decision is to the user. And this is important to give this control back to the user also in any time, to opt out from the demand response. And yeah, that's what we thought in the project. Yeah.
Why not? Just for your arms.
Yeah.
Well, we had some testing going on for this thing about the boilers, and I was surprised that it was so doable to have these boilers at the right temperature, only using their own PV systems. Like in the Spanish pilot site, it was really amazing how much could be saved. About 50% of the usage of this boiler, just by using it at the right moment, and still the same comfort is there for the user. So there's a lot to gain there.
Great stuff. Just a very brief comment, just in relation to comfort. I think we do need to link it very much with health. If we think about, we have no problem using sensors. Many people have smartwatches in the room, for our health, and we have no problem sharing that data. It should be the same thing as well for comfort in the home. So, that we have, when you consider energy justice and energy poverty, we should have a right to comfort in the home, and that should be linked in as well in a broader sense rather than, say, just in the projects.
One comment to that, and I think we will.
Well, actually, another thing that came up in the Netherlands was safety, especially with the boilers. It's very good to check the quality of the equipment, because we had two of the smart switches that started that ignited actually because it was passing through too much electricity from the boiler, and that actually is not very good for user engagement. Actually, and fortunately there was no fire, but we underestimated the heat that was produced.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Thank you all to the panelists for sharing their stories. If you want to continue the conversations, please come up to us or have a coffee with us. We would love to talk more, and otherwise see you around in these 2 days.